Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. There are many different types of Imperials. We have ruthless huntress like Dedra Miro, who are born and die in Imperial captivity. We have naive and romantic foot soldiers like Cyril Karn, who dream of making a difference. Then we have over-the-top and dramatic ego-driven organizers like Director Krennic, who steal and destroy everything he can get his hands on. The type of Imperial who we haven't mentioned yet in, 2 seasons of Andor is what I like to call the perfect bureaucrat. These are the middle managers that actually run the internal structure of the Empire, and they are extremely important and probably the only part of the Imperial structure that you could argue makes any sense at all or has any merit to it. Today we'll be taking a look at Major Leo Patargaz, supervisor of the ISB board. If you take a close look at Major Leo Patargaz, especially in the first season of Andor, he's probably one of the most intelligent and competent individuals you'll find in the Empire. He oversees his group of ISB supervisors with an extremely steady hand and, dare I say, fairness that almost seems out of place in what really is a chaotic government system heavily influenced by the Sith. In our last video, we mentioned how Luthen Rael uses Sith-like tactics to manipulate people and gather power, but the irony is he uses these methods in service of the light side to destroy the Sith and the Empire. Well, in many ways, I actually believe that Major Patargaz exhibits many qualities that one might consider closely aligned to the Jedi and the light side. But of course, he uses those powers in the service of tyranny, oppression, and ultimately the dark side. Star Wars has always been a very complex story, and Andor is finally bringing that reality to life, in video form. To start with, let's take a look at the ISB conference chamber where all of the individual ISB supervisors meet. Located inside of the ISB headquarters building, which, unlike most gray bureaucratic complexes, is quite stunning to look at. The ISB central office is pyramid-shaped. On the exterior, we have 10 massive curved and mirrored structures that are aligned in a circle. I imagine from the top, you kind of get this sense that you're looking at an Imperial cog of some kind. This is not your typical government building on Coruscant, and neither is the ISB a typical intelligence gathering agency. It's a part of Compnor, which is really Palpatine's personal political movement. Every individual organization within Compnor needs to place the needs of Palpatine before the Empire and also the average citizen. And so this isn't a normal bureaucratic building. The Bureau of Standards is a normal bureaucratic building. This is actually a cathedral, a holy fortress built to protect the glorious God Emperor Palpatine from any evil or chaos that threatens the pristine beauty of Palpatine's vision for the galaxy. Inside of the ISB headquarters are legions upon legions of some of the most zealous and devoted foot soldiers of the Emperor. Now let's think about this. Were there any organizations during the Galactic Republic period which existed outside of the traditional government structure and military chain and was also dedicated to protecting the Republic as a part of their ideology? Well, the Jedi Order, of course. And their holy fortress was also a pyramid-like structure, the Jedi Temple. And get this, they also had an ISB board-like group. They just called it the Jedi Council. Instead of having supervisors, you had Jedi Masters, senior leaders of the Order who orchestrated missions and try to solve the pressing matters in the galaxy that could be handled only by a small group of very capable individuals that can be deployed with precision that a military force can never have.
Security is an illusion. You want security? Call the Navy. Launch a regiment of troopers.
The ISB serves at the behest of the Emperor in the same way the Jedi used to serve at the behest of the Chancellor. Both groups were oftentimes assigned missions directly from the executive branch. They were also given extrajudicial powers and the ability to have authority over other government organizations and even the military, which of course leads to gross overreach and a lack of checks and balances, and just a general dependency on individual hero units to solve problems rather than using institutions, rules, and regulations. The Jedi Order and the ISB are both tackling responsibilities and challenges that they are simply not equipped to handle. You need multiple intelligence organizations. You need multiple law enforcement agencies to keep the peace. Alone, these organizations are doomed to fail. I mean, even the ISB board's conference room is set up in a similar way to the Jedi High Council chambers. Both of these rooms seem to be housed at the top of the temple-like structure they're housed in. Everyone is arranged in a circle as equals so that a conversation and discussion can be had about what's going on in the galaxy. This is actually quite rare in the Empire, where power tends to be very hierarchical and concentrated at the top. Underlings are expected to never talk about things and just follow orders. Major Patargaz, however, encourages dissent. He likes people who think outside the box. This is why he likes Dedra. It's rare in the Empire to see individuals like Major Patargaz who not only listen to his underlings, but also tries to facilitate open and honest conversations between his supervisors. And he even mentors them in an effort to bring out their best. The traditional view of the Jedi is that they are an organization who tries to adhere naturally with the flow of the Force. But in practice, the Jedi Order in the late Republic period and during the Clone Wars became very rigid. Rules upon rules were levied against the Jedi Order by the High Council. For instance, only certain types of Force users can be recruited into the organization, usually individuals who are extremely young and have minds that are basically blank slates that can easily be molded by the Order. Relationships were also forbidden, not because love or compassion were a problem, but because of the fear of attachment. And while the Jedi preached justice and liberty for all, clearly when it came to the Sith, they were more than willing to carry out extrajudicial executions of a Sith Lord without a trial. I know a lot of people love the Jedi. I'm a Star Wars channel, and I know a lot of people think I'm biased about the Jedi, but I'm just literally interpreting what George Lucas wrote. The ISB shares many similarities with the Jedi in this way. Instead of worshipping the Force, though, they are zealous about preserving the New Order and all of the peace and stability that the Empire has brought to the galaxy. And if you take a look at Major Patargaz, in many ways, he's kind of aligned with the Jedi Code, right? What's the first line? There is no emotion, there is only peace. While the ISB might play with other people's emotions, start false flag attacks, and create a lack of peace, I guess, Patargaz expects his supervisors to be emotionless and at peace when they are carrying out their investigations. This is one of the big critiques he has against Dedra pursuing Cassian. She is obsessed with this case. Her emotions are clouding her judgment. There is no ignorance, there is only knowledge. In an early conflict between Dedra Meero and Supervisor Blevin, Patargaz scolds Meero for not having properly prepared her case against her colleague. Patargaz is not a man swayed by emotion. The only thing he really reacts to is actual knowledge that can be acted on.
Here, we act on vetted and verified information. Alert me when this materializes into something more definite. Until then, confine future activities to your sectors. Thank you, Lieutenant.
There is no passion, there is serenity. Major Patargaz isn't looking for Sith Lords who will destroy evidence and kill key witnesses and are driven by their passion. He wants cold, clinical operators who are focused on gathering the information and getting the job done. That's all.
I'm counting on you to keep watch on these idiots.
An honor, sir.
Really? It's an assignment. Calibrate your enthusiasm.
Yes, sir.
There is no chaos, there is harmony. This is really the core belief of Major Patargaz. This is what leads to him supporting the Empire and ignoring all of its most horrific actions.
We are healthcare providers. We treat sickness. We identify symptoms. We locate germs, whether they arise from within or have come from the outside.
Major Patargaz sees himself as a doctor who is trying to protect the Empire from chaotic diseases that infect the minds of the citizens and threatens this peace and harmony that he believes exists. There are plenty of crazy chaos clowns and, evil muscle twirling villains and just murdering psychopaths in the ISB. But Major Patargaz is the complete opposite. A villain, yes, he is serving as an enforcer for a brutal empire, but he uses the tools of his enemies in the best ways possible. He is in complete control of his emotions. His mind is the sharpest of weapons because it is unclouded by bias, ideology, emotion, and anything else that could really distract him from the truth he is pursuing. As far as Imperial officers go, Major Patargaz is, pretty relaxed. He's not the type of individual who steals ideas from his underlings and takes credit for it, which is very rare in the Empire, actually. He's not an individual who likes abusing or punishing his men in excessive ways, right? He's not trying to create fear from his underlings. He just wants his people to be competent and good at their jobs. And most importantly, I think Patargaz even cares about some of these ISB supervisors. He's not completely cold-hearted towards them.
Young is dead. That's why I'm late.
What?
He was killed. They just found him in a park across town.
The gasp, the little shock. I'm not sure what exactly Patargaz thinks about Lonnie, but he is definitely surprised that he's dead, and he probably views his death as a huge loss for this organization. The other time we see Patargaz surprised is when he learns that they're building an Imperial garrison over Palmo.
We're building a new armory in Palmo.
Excuse me?
We're starting tomorrow.
Patargaz knows about the Tarkin massacre, and he also understands why having an Imperial presence in Palma was a bad idea. It will surely increase tensions. Patargaz doesn't like this because he prefers, again, using more clinical methods to counter the rebellion. In this way, him and Dedra are very similar. Now, Patargaz's morality comes out more when he's in this mentor role, especially when he's talking with Dedra. He's constantly trying to give her advice, shore up her weaknesses, like her tendency to trust her gut instincts instead of just presenting a tight and well-informed case. But herein lies the difference between the Jedi and Patargaz. Now, the Jedi are a truly compassionate force. They view morality as a central tenet in their code. For Leo, morality is just an instrument, like all of the other tools and people at his disposal. He is not above or beneath using it. He understands from a rational point of view that morality is just a group of principles and guidelines that keep peace in society. He creates a sense of fairness and morality amongst the ISB supervisors when they're interacting with each other so that there is less chaos, so that this unit can do their job. Let me take a look at how Patargaz again punishes individuals. He doesn't take any joy out of doing this. When Dedra completely screws up on Ferrix, he doesn't just get rid of her, he actually keeps her in her position as Patargaz recognizes her excellence and also understands that maybe this was just something she wasn't experienced with handling. It's because of this fairness and moral framework that Patargaz follows, the ISB is actually full of some pretty competent people. And although there is a culture of Sith competition within the ISB, it's also clearly not something that Major Patargaz likes.
You have 2 sectors to supervise. Levin is handling 6. He does, I will admit, hew to the traditional viewpoint of this office and its staffing. He is, I'm sure, a challenge to work with.
But then again, there are some things that not even he can control. Patargaz, like a lot of his contemporaries, grew up during the Clone Wars period. It was a very chaotic and wild era in galactic history. This need for stability and peace is completely understandable, but he is very much the typical figure who lives beneath the banality of evil. He is not ideological, he is not really partisan. I could easily see him working in the judicial department alongside the Jedi Order for the Republic. As a matter of fact, his superior, Wolf Yularen, did just that. I mean, he was working alongside the Jedi during the war, and then he flipped sides. Individuals like Patargaz maintain the bureaucracy, the structures that keep the Empire operational. But because the Empire is ruled in a top-down nature, because its power structure is very much hierarchical, the closer you get to Emperor Palpatine, the more responsibility you have. And that's a big problem because when you catch the Emperor's eye, when he shares power with you, should you fail, like Major Patargaz did when it came to keeping the Death Star project under wraps, then you will also shoulder all of the blame and all of the consequences as well. Major Patargaz won't punish Dedra for something that isn't completely her fault on Ferrix, but Emperor Palpatine will definitely kill people just for the fun of it. And I think Major Patargaz recognizes this chaotic nature of this emperor he follows. And so while we look at individuals like Krennic and Tarkin and even Major Patargaz, and we might admire them for climbing up so high within the Empire, they're also in danger. Something about flying too close to the sun with wax wings. Although Patargaz doesn't have wax wings, he's not an idiot, he is very competent. The only problem with him is that, like everyone else in the Empire, he's not really compatible with the system. No one is really compatible with the system because the end goal is just for Palpatine to rule everything by himself. I mean, you saw the Eternal Sith, the weird cult he has by the end of the sequels. When you live under such a chaotic and crazy ruler, at one point your number will be called as well. You can be the most loyal individual, but the Sith lightning really f***s with Palpatine's brain, and out of fear, out of paranoia, he might just send you flying into a moon. And if you listen to that, well, I don't know, do you deserve to fly into the moon? Maybe. As the Empire gets more fearful and tries to squeeze the populace even harder, more unrest will occur. And weak leadership like Emperor Palpatine's leads to more cruelty by bureaucrats who are trying to maintain control. This is always said about dictators, like individuals like Bashar Assad, the dentist, they called him. Apparently he was never supposed to rule. His brother was more of your typical evil strongman type leader, but he died, and so the dentist had to step up. Many theorize that Bashar's weakness initially, his inability to control the country, is what forced them to become even more brutal and drop barrel bombs on civilians, use chemical warfare and stuff like that. In situations like this where the Empire begins to lose control, how can individuals like Major Patargaz in his little clean white room, how can he actually survive? What he stands for runs counter to everything the Empire is doing.
Random acts of insurrection are occurring constantly throughout the galaxy. There are whole armies, battalions that have no idea that they've already enlisted in the cause.
When Patargaz listens to Nemec, it's like a doctor listening to a report on how the cancer has become metastatic and now is completely unstoppable. I feel like Leo does understand why this is happening, and it's not just the rebellion's fault, it's really the Empire that is pushing the rebellion closer and closer to him. The irony is, because he uses the tools of his enemies to build an elite investigation machine, when the Empire's true nature is exposed, its cruelty, its chaos, and fear, it really does run counter to everything that Patargaz has built. Although in his last moments, I imagine the only thing he really is thinking about is the overwhelming fear washing over him as his entire life's work comes crumbling down around him.